coaching men and women's tennis is like coaching two completely different sports. The play style that they have, the style of shots that you hit, it's completely different. The kind of game that they're playing and just the matter of fact of just approaching them how they are is completely different. It really is. It feels like a night and day difference. How I approach a situation with the girls would be completely different to how I approach that situation with the guys. Totally, totally night and day. When it comes to coaching both of them, they're completely different.
Joining me now is the tennis coach at East Gaston, Coach Connor. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So let's start with you. We'll go back in time here. What did sports look like for you as a kid?
Oh, goodness. I grew up around sports. My dad's been a baseball coach for like 30 years at this point. So my sister and I played a couple different ones growing up. I competitively swam for a good bit of time. And then middle school and high school, volleyball was my main sport. So that's kind of what I did. And kind of from there, I love going to sporting events. I love watching sports. It's just a comfortable place in my family. So, yeah.
It's interesting that you said you competitive swam. So I swam in high school.
Really?
And it's also interesting that you're a tennis coach because those are both very like individualized sports.
Yeah.
Like, would you say that? Would you agree with that? I mean, I know there's like team competitions as well, like within tennis as well with swimming, but like, do you see the crossovers between like, it's very independent. It's like and you're on your own island out there.
Yes, it's so true. I guess I never really thought about it at that point, but like they are so similar because it is like, it's just you. If you have a bad day, that's on you. You've got nobody else to blame. It's 100%, your responsibility based on how you perform. But then at the same time, like when you're with a team also, you do well, the team does well. So I think that's a fun dynamic also. It's individual, but it's the best of both worlds, really. It's individual plus you're together.
Sticking with you being younger, when you were around sports, who inspired you? Was it parents, were it coaches, were just other athletes?
My dad's a big inspiration with how he coached, just the way he approached athletics, the mindset that he had, the, life lessons that we got from athletics was a huge inspiration to me. I always just wanted to do the best I could for myself and then, do the best I could for my family at the same time.
Did you ever have like a plan to like, you wanted to be a professional in sports? Like I had this goal, like when I swam, I was okay. I wasn't great. Like I was good, but I always like thought like, all right, I could swim in college and never even went on a recruiting trip. So like that. So did you have goals or aspirations of sports being a full-time gig for you?
I guess I want to say maybe the college aspirations for a while. And then I was just kind of, you get older and you're like, this isn't necessarily in the cards for me. But I think growing up, you always like imagine like, oh, what if I was like a swimmer in the Olympics? Like, what would that be like? Or, what would those goals be? But I think for a little bit, and then I just kind of was like, that's not for me. That's kind of
at what point did coaching enter your mindset of like you wanted to become a coach? Obviously you're a teacher now also. So like at what point do you realize like you want to take on that mentorship role? Like when does that kick in for you?
So it was around the same time as teaching. I've always known I wanted to be a teacher. That's something I've known since I was like, my parents would say kindergarten. I used to say like, I want to be a teacher so I can go on all the field trips. It's like, what I thought was the best ever. You eventually realize you don't go on field trips anymore. So coaching for me, because I was just so comfortable around athletics and around the idea of high school athletics, in the back of my head, I was like, yes, I could see myself coaching with teaching at the same time. And when I got hired at East Gaston, they asked if that was something I was comfortable with. And I said, hadn't given it that much thought. I was so focused on the teaching part that I was like, oh yeah, you know what? I could see myself coaching. And when the position was offered, they asked if I was interested in coaching tennis. And I said, yes, of course, I'll do it. And I just fell in love with it. It was something completely different than what I was used to. And it kind of saved me in a lot of different ways. That first year teaching, you're so invested in trying to make sure you're doing the best you can. Coaching really pulled me out of that like overanalyzing mindset, and it gave me something completely different to focus on every day after school. And that really was just a savior at that point.
So your first year teaching, you jumped head or feet first or whatever into being a coach also?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I was like, my first year teaching, I didn't like, I mean, I took on a couple other things. I mean, I teach fourth grade, so it's way different for me, but like, I wasn't going to jump into like coaching stuff like right off the bat. That's kind of crazy. So you're the first coach that I've had on that your goal is to be a teacher. Everybody else has had either a goal of playing a sport professionally or becoming like a doctor or something else. Right. And they've all kind of like became teachers. Mm-hmm. Has education lived up to what you thought it was? Because you mentioned, as young as kindergarten, you wanted to be a teacher. So has education lived up to what you thought it would be?
Yes and no. I have the greatest job in the world. You ask me any day of the week, I will say the same. I love what I do. I love my students. I love my athletes. I just getting to hang out with these kids on a daily basis is the greatest joy of my life. There are challenges that you don't anticipate going into it, but they say, I just joke with my dad when I said I want to be a teacher. He's like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yes." And then he would continuously ask me as that continued to my plan. He's like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure." There are challenges that come with it, but the good days always outweigh the bad days. And it's just, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. It's the best job in the world. You
mentioned loving your students and you mentioned athletes also. Do you find that it's easier for you to build relationships with your students because of your coaching, and then also vice versa? Like, are you able to take on the coaching role and build relationships with these athletes because you're already a teacher also?
I really think so. One of the things that I really do believe brought me into like the community of our school was coaching, because kids get to see you in a different light outside of like the walls of your classroom. They get to see a little bit more personality. You're a little bit more open, I guess, in a way. You're a little bit more, you can joke around a little bit more, especially with tennis. We have a lot of good banter. We have a lot of laughs. And one thing that really is, useful is seeing them outside the classroom, them seeing you outside of the classroom. And so that sort of translates. And I found that you are able to build a really great rapport because they can see you as something else and they see you supporting them in a different way, which is really important.
So you mentioned the kids seeing you in a different way. So I used to teach so I live in Mount Holly. So my kids are all going through like the Pinewood, Mount Holly Middle, East Gaston thing. But I used to teach in Gastonia, and now I teach at Pinewood. But what I've noticed is as an elementary school teacher, like when I go out anywhere, like whether it's Food Lion or you go to the park, whatever, and you run into kids, it's like you're like a local celebrity, like especially at the young age, you're a celebrity. But you're like in a weird spot because you're also a coach. So now your exposure is like doubled or tripled because not only are you outside like normally outside of your classroom, but now you're on the stage as far as being a coach too. So do you feel like that? Like it's a weird thing, but like do you feel like that celebrity status that you're kind of like always like on a stage where like because you got to remember like, you don't watch what you do, like your eyes are on you all the time.
Yes, I do feel your eyes are on you all the time. I live in Gastonia, and a majority of my students live Stanley and Mount Holly, so there are very few times like if I'm going into that part of town, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure like I don't look crazy before I like go and like go to the grocery store. One place I run into kids all the time at Target. And so anytime I'm walking into Target, my sister will always joke. She'll like, I wonder how many people are going to like be like, oh, there's Miss Connor, there's Coach Connor. And I'm like, hopefully none today. So like that is always funny when you do see them like out and about, because some students are like, oh my goodness, hey. And then some are just like, oh, I don't like seeing you outside of the classroom. You're not, I don't want to mix. the things. I don't want to see you out. It's like, you're in this box. I want you to stay in this box. So that's always kind of funny.
Well, it's weird too, because like you're a high school teacher, so like you have that adolescent age going on, whereas like elementary, I'm still like, it's kind of like a superhero or like mythological to these kids, like just like, it's just, that's what I am to these kids. Whereas like junior high and high school, it's just like, it's different. So I can imagine what you deal with. What is your classroom experience like? Like if somebody walked into your classroom right now, what can they expect to experience?
Oh, well, right now it's empty for summer, but I hope they feel really comfortable. I try to make sure I teach social studies, so there's a lot of maps. I teach world history and geography for the most part. So a lot of time that's the first thing that they draw to. They're like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this place. And so that's really fun. I try to keep it as calming as possible, because the majority of the time I'm teaching freshmen, be a little bit rowdy. And so as calm as we can get them, the better we are for the day. And I hope calm, happy, just content.
Do you see a crossover between your coaching voice and demeanor versus your teaching voice and demeanor? Like, do you see that crossover?
Yes, I really do. I think I coach very similar to how I teach. I think it took, especially when I started coaching boys, when I started coaching girls, it wasn't really that big of a change. When I started coaching the boys, that was a big adjustment for them. Luckily for most of them, I taught them beforehand. But the way I come in, like, I'm not a big yeller. I'm not going to get in your face. And tennis isn't really a sport that I need to. I'm try to be as encouraging as possible. And for a lot of them, I kind of took them by surprise. They're like, I'm not really used to this sort of dynamic. But I think I do coach very similar to how I teach in that way. I do see a lot of crossovers with that.
How is it coaching the boys versus the girls? So like you're in an interesting spot, like you said, you swam and I swam. And so like there's very few sports where like the genders cross, like I had Coach Hawkins on from East Gaston and he coaches the women's team and the men's team, but they're at separate times of the year. So like he's not crossing boys and girls, like having to deal with that, but you deal with that on a daily. So like, is it do you feel like sometimes you have to approach the boys different than the girls or vice versa?
So they are in separate seasons. So,
oh, okay. All right. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it's fun. It's the opposite of soccer. So with Coach Hawkins, so when in the fall it's girls season and in the spring it's boys season. But they are, yes, I say that coaching men and women's tennis is like coaching two completely different sports. The play style that they have, the style of shots that you hit, it's completely different. The kind of game that they're playing and just the matter of fact of just approaching them how they are is completely different. It really is. It feels like a night and day difference. How I approach a situation with the girls would be completely different to how I approach that situation with the guys. Totally night and day. When it comes to coaching both of them, they're completely different.
How is it when you are working individual? Because this again is a sport where I know it's mostly individualized, but it is a team component as well. How do you balance that? Like where you're trying to like work with kids on whether it's, I guess, forms or certain things or how to approach things, but at the same time, you also have to have that team component.
It can be a challenge just because everybody's at such a completely different skill level. My number one seeded player is going to need to work on something different than my number 6, than my number 7, so on down the line. And so it can get kind of hard to, organize it in your head of like, okay, this is what I need to work on with this person. But I'm feeling really lucky that the athletes that I have are very self-reflective and they'll come to me and be like, hey, I really want to work on this today. And it's like, okay, I'll spend some extra time and work on it with you. I've had some amazing, phenomenal assistant coaches who've been really helpful these past couple of years to the point where I was like, I can't believe I ever did this by myself. I don't ever want to go back. But you try and make sure that, again, they're working on what they need to for their individual game. But what's, again, so great about tennis is at the end of the day, when we do go to a match, they're focused on themselves for their individual match. But the second they get off the court, they're like, hey, how'd so-and-so do? Or what's our team score looking like? I won, but did they win there? How many do we need to win together? And that's something that I think is so special, is that, yes, they're focused on themselves, but majority of the time they're like, did we win together? I can have some guys and some girls win individually, but if we didn't win together, they're upset. They're like, I can't believe we didn't beat this team all together. And then they're like ready to go at it the next day. And so that's what's really cool, is it is individual, but they really do approach it like a team sport. I had one of my guys say one time, we were playing a team, they were like, they're just a bunch of guys who play tennis. We're a team that just plays tennis. Like, we're a team together. They're just a bunch of individuals. And I thought that was really special. And that's like really how they approach it, is we're in an individual sport, but we're together. We're trying to win as a team.
That's awesome. Cause that's a really hard concept to teach. Like, one of the struggles I always see in fourth grade is like getting people to work together, like understanding the concept of like the team role. Like, you're rolling as part of your role is with the team. So like, you may do great, but if the team drowns, like you didn't really do great, or
Right.
vice versa. If you don't do good, but the team did great, you did great also because you contributed to the team. So like, there's always, just, it's a weird thing. It's hard to teach. And so it's like, you're blessed in that aspect that you have that going on for you.
Mm-hmm.
In your classroom, do you ever find yourself using sports to explain stuff in social studies?
I would say a bit. Ironically, like, when it comes to explaining, I think like World War II a lot, or like a war or something, trying to explain like Blitzkrieg or something like that. And I'm drawing like X's and O's on a board. And I was like, wow, this is very football. And I'm like, this is how they surrounded them in this time. And then they wiped them out from behind. Or talking about like retreat. I'm like, do you know what retreat means? Or like a counterattack. And there, a lot of my like athletes be like, I know exactly what that means. And I'm like, yes, there you go. It's like this instance. So not too much, but in certain instances, they're like, oh yeah, I guess I do kind of use sports analogies in that way.
Yeah, I use a lot of them in my class all the time with like math. And mine's usually a lot of like wins and losses, because I try to explain like, because I mean, you might deal with this a little bit, but like with state testing, I'll always explain, like when we do check-ins, I'm like, it's a 4-quarter game, it's like your first check-in is your score. We're trying to beat the state, like that's how I try to explain it to them. How is your approach to coaching and teaching different than others?
I don't know. I would say I'm similar in a lot of ways. Like, I've had a lot of great coaches growing up. I know we have some phenomenal coaches at East Gaston. I'm really proud to work in that athletic department. I think my approach is a little bit more, I think I'm a little bit more calm than maybe some of the other coaches. Again, I'm not the kind that's going to get in your face. I'm not the kind that's going to yell. I try to be as encouraging as possible. I try to listen as much. I find that, especially with teenagers, they'll tell you what they need. You just have to be able to take the time and listen. And when they tell you what you need, you say, okay, I will do the best I can to make sure I can get you to that place. So I would say maybe calmer, maybe, less, not say less competitive, because I'm super competitive. I want to win all the time, but less, in your face, less screaming. I find that they have enough motivation in themselves that they want to win. They want to be successful. I don't need to push that as much. It's more so the kind of aftermath. If we're frustrated or upset or angry, it's the coming down off of that. And it's like, hey, let's step back. Let's look at the big picture. We've got so many more things we can do and accomplish than just this one individual match.
That's a great philosophy to have too. Like, teenagers will tell you just have to listen, because I think that in life in general, like, people will tell you exactly how they feel, whether they're telling you or showing you or some variation. As long as you're paying attention, you're going to find out. And it's usually the people that aren't paying attention are the ones that are like caught off guard, because it's just like they were telling you, you weren't paying attention to it.
They will tell you what they need.
You kind of mentioned what teamwork looks like in tennis. What does teamwork look like in your classroom?
A lot of different ways. I think, whether it's a group project or, I love having them work together on things, whether it's like breaking down or analyzing an article. I'm like, hey, find a friend, read this together, see if you can figure it out with another person. I think a lot of times it kind of catches them off guard in a way because I think, they've gotten so isolated within the past like recent years, trying to break them out of like, no, you can talk to another person. You guys can bounce ideas off each other. You can disagree, and that's perfectly okay. But, working with another person, getting an idea from another person is so invaluable. And I hope that I can express that in my classroom and that they're able to see that in so many different ways of like, oh, well, I had this idea and they had this idea, and together we came up with something even better. And so hopefully that comes across.
Where do you stand with like trying to teach accountability in your class? So, like you kind of have it in a great spot right now with tennis, where you mentioned like these kids have a great performance, but then they also are worried about where the team is. Like that's a lot of accountability there. But like, how do you project that into your classroom? Because it's like, it's real hard. And especially now, like you just see everywhere, it's nobody wants to be accountable for anything. They don't want to take responsibility for what happened. Or I see it all the time. I see it in sports all the time with like big athletes. It's just like, you could be a little bit more accountable. So how do you kind of preach that in your class?
It's hard. First, just trying to teach accountability in general, because that's not something they like 15, 14-year-olds want to do. They don't want to, they want to turn in this assignment late and they want it to be counted. They want it to be graded immediately and they want it to be 100. And it's like, no, a due date is a due date. You miss that due date, there's consequences. You have to understand, like, you chose to goof off in this moment in class and you chose not to get your work done. That means you either got to get it done at home or you're going to get a 0 for it. And there's no pushing around that consequence. Your actions always have consequences. And I try to express that in my classroom. And, there's always extreme circumstances, which like everybody's a human being. Again, just talk to me. I find it so funny because kids will be so scared to come and talk to you about something. They're like, hey, like I had something happened at home last night. Like I couldn't get this done. I'm like, that's okay. We can work something out. I'll find that they're so scared to come and do that. I was like, teachers are humans. Like we understand at the same time, but at the end of the day, there's a bigger goal. Like, especially when it comes to high school, 4 years, you're an adult. There are real life consequences if you don't get something done. And I think trying to put that into the perspective of like, hey, you don't meet a deadline at work. There are real life consequences. Like you could be laid off, you could be fired. And, having kids for like kind of the first time when you get that age, they're like, oh, wait a second. If I don't do something, something's going to happen. If I do this, this will happen. Trying to like bring in that real world aspect of like, you need to take, again, accountability. You have to be able to understand, this happens, then this happens, consequences and cause and effect.
Well, I try to do that with my fourth graders too. And it's like, I don't want to use the word scare, but like, I kind of do try to like scare it into them a little bit. Well, because especially like like fourth grade to me is you're right away from fifth grade. And then it's like by the end of fourth grade, you're a fifth grader now. And then you're 1 year away from middle school. And then you're there. And it's just like the way these kids are growing up so fast now, you need to be accountable. You need to know like stuff. There's consequences for your actions. Right. And one of the things I always say to kids, I'm all about the questions. My thing is the questions have to come at a certain time. Like you can't ask the question after you've been in trouble or like after you've missed the assignment or after this. Like if stuff comes up prior to it, that's sure, come tell me or share with me, but you can't like, or even if like you don't turn an assignment in, come talk to me about why you didn't turn it in. Don't come and talk to me after I've said, hey, here's your 50. And then it's just like, then you tell me about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an interesting slope. So you're in a interesting spot also being a coach now in this world where there's NIL. So, and I just gotta ask you about this. So we go to the winter meeting for athletics at East Gaston ninth grade. Now I know I'm a big sports fan, so I know pretty much a lot about NIL, but I didn't realize how much high schoolers are now affected by it. Like, and what I mean by that is like deals that they're getting and how stuff has to be signed off by school and all these things. And I just saw a story the other day. One of the college football coaches, he says that they're paying kids like 30 grand or 20 grand a month just to stay committed to the college. So like there's these kids that are in high school that are getting 20 grand a month to be committed to the school. So that way, when they graduate, they'll go to Georgia or Alabama, whatever school it is. Now, I don't know, obviously, the level of recruiting for tennis and swimming versus football is different. But, like, does that come up when you're, like, talking to kids just about, like, you have to have a plan? Like, whether your plan is to play tennis down the road or it's to do it, like, you have to have a plan going into it?
I haven't dealt with that much NIL stuff with tennis. That's not really something I've had to experience. We've had a student, I've had a former player go and play tennis in college, which was super exciting. But when it comes to like having a plan, I think for a lot of my kids, first of all, they're all almost all of them play multiple sports, which is really exciting. Some of them, yes, tennis is their number one sport, but for others, like it's not. And they do have the opportunity to go and play at the next level. And we do typically will have big conversations of like, what do you want to do? And especially at this age, like, what are your plans? Do you have a plan? Do you want to go to school? Because if you don't want to go to school, that's totally fine. There's, a lot of kids, 4 years isn't a 4-year university isn't in their plan. Like it's not in their life plan. A lot of them, are going to go to a trade school. They're going to go become a welder. They're going to go, start working at a family business. There's go into the military. There's so many different options at that point. And I think talking with them and saying like, hey, if this is something you're interested, if going and playing college sports is something you want to do, I will do everything in my power to help you get there. But if it's not, that is perfectly okay. You are completely valid and wanting to have a great high school athletic career and then ending it there. That's perfectly fine at the same time. But I haven't had that much NIL experience. I do remember sitting in those meetings and hearing like, okay, well, they can't get this much from this person and that. And I'm sitting there like, this is insane. Like I can't.
Yeah, and I think it's just gonna keep going. And I think eventually, like, I know like the big focus right now is obviously football and basketball, but I think eventually it's going to hit every sport. Cause like, even if you look at like Livy Dunn in college, like with gymnastics, it's like, she's just like turned like, nobody cares that she's a gymnast. She's like this super like famous social media star now. And it's just like, so eventually that's going to trickle down to every other sport. Have you ever seen the light bulb like click on in the kids, like in their eyes, like, because you just talked about like, maybe 4 years isn't for you or a trade school's for you or something else. You work for your family business. But I'm also going to say that there's probably a few kids who've played sports with you for tennis or just kids you've had in your classroom that they don't think there is a goal for them. Like there's not a 4-year goal for them. The goal is hopefully I graduate, or I might be the first person in my family to graduate or, and I know it's way crazier beyond that. But have you ever seen the light bulb click on for them when they realize like, all right, there is more for me. Like it's possible for me.
I have. That's one of the best feelings in the world. I've had a lot of students who they are like, I'm the first generation to go to college, which is so exciting. I had a tennis player experience that the other day, or that feeling of them like getting into their top choice university. I had one of my girls a year or two back who's like, she got in and I was the first person she told because she couldn't get a hold of her mom. And she was just like, we were jumping up and down and so excited. And then you have some where like they get their first, like, I get somebody coming in the room like, Miss Connor, like, I just got my first like offer. I just got my first like interest from like a D1 school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. And it's like, that opens up their eyes to being like, I didn't think I could do this. And it actually becoming a reality is really, really exciting. And it's one of the like best feelings to see them go out and succeed in that way, because you're like, I knew you could do it. I knew you could go and do something like that. You just had to like, I always tell them, I'm like, I wish you had as much like confidence in yourself as I have in you, because you could do anything. You conquer the world. I was like, you can do it all. If you just had a sliver of what I believe you can do, you'd be unstoppable.
That's awesome. When do you notice the kids, and I'm talking more about your athletes now, when do you notice that they get the life lesson? And I don't mean the X's and O's. I mean, like, when do you realize like they get it? Like whatever you were trying to teach them, it finally connected with them.
I think it varies based on different kids, different lessons. I think, one thing I find always funny is I'll have like little mantras or I'll say little things, and every now and then a kid will say it back, and I'm like, oh wait, you were actually listening to what I was saying? Like, wow, that's crazy. But when you see kind of the full end picture of what they've been able to do, what they've been able to accomplish, and again, like at the end of the day, we're just trying to make sure that they have the most positive, high school experience possible, the most positive athletic experience possible. And so seeing that at the end of the day is really, really beneficial. Really, it makes you feel good whenever you're like, oh, wait, you were listening, or like you finally get it. You're not so focused and extremely upset or angry or whatever emotional about a win or loss. You're like, it's just one game. I've got another one next week. I'll do better that time. I'll be the best version of myself next time. And I think that's really cool to see. But it just depends on each athlete. Everyone's so different.
Let's go a little rapid fire. Favorite sports movie?
Oh, Miracle, 100%.
That is there like a? I gotta ask you this because you're now
Okay.
I think you're the third or fourth so I've interviewed 4 East Gaston. You're the 4th East Gaston coach. You're the third one to say Miracle. Medici said Miracle. Yeah, Medici said Miracle. Hawkins said Miracle, and now you said. So is there like a meeting room where you guys all sit down and watch Miracle together?
That just validates all of our friendships. I'm like, we're all on the same level. I mean, you can't watch Miracle and like not want to like wear it, like paint yourself red, white, and blue, like run through a brick wall. Like it's a phenomenal movie. So it just validates all our friendships there.
If you could coach any professional sports team, what team would it be?
I don't know. I guess tennis. I guess I would say that's what I'm most comfortable with. Or swim. Swim would be fun.
Cool. You mentioned mantras earlier. Do you have a mantra or a quote that you live by or find yourself saying all the time?
Probably 2. I think that I say a lot, especially to the kids. Something my mom used to say, like when we would have like a big test or something going on, she would say, give your best. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be better than everybody else, but you do need to give your best. And that's something before we go on the court at any point, a little team huddle, it's like, hey, go out and give your best. And your best today might be different than your best was yesterday. It might be different than your best is tomorrow, but you cannot give better than what your best is. And that's all I want you to do in that moment is to go out and give your best. And so that's one of them. And then I guess the other one I say kind of a lot is, don't let temporary emotions make temporary emotions make you have permanent decisions. I think that's a big one because so often you'll have, these kids come off the court and they're like, played a bad game and they're like, that's it, I'm done, I'm quitting, I'm not playing a sport again, I'm over it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's not make permanent decisions on temporary emotions. Let's calm down for a second. Let's take a breath, vent to me. I can take it, let me have it. But, tomorrow we'll just try again because again, I'm never asking you to go out there and win. I just want you to give me your best. Whatever your best is that day. That's all I'm asking for.
I love the best quote too, because I always try to tell kids like effort, like you show all your effort, give your effort. And I promise you, like, even if that kid is smarter than you based on the score or whatever, if you give your effort, your best effort, and he even like stumbles for a second or doesn't give his full effort or her, you're going to beat them. Yeah. That's what happens. It's when people get too confident. There's that fine line between confident and cocky. It's like the minute that they're too confident, they become cocky and they just they lose because they didn't give you their best.
Right.
Do you have a pregame ritual or anything, even if you did when you were in school, when you were younger and you were playing sports, or anything you do now?
Pregame ritual. Prayer, number 1. Always do that before every game. When it comes to team pregame ritual, it's usually come off the court. They'll do a team prayer themselves. Usually it's captain led. I'll come in. We'll say, all right, a little pep talk. Usually it's not that much from me. It's, hey, go out there, give your best. Be careful when it comes to calling your lines. If you need me, I'm here for you. Come to the fence. I've got you. And then, go have a good time, have fun. Then captains break it down and we're off. So not too crazy. If we're going to a game, there's always music playing on the bus. So I guess that's the pregame ritual. It's bad teenager music that I'm like, I wish I had brought my headphones. So
Here's my favorite one. You mentioned the bus. Do you have to drive the bus?
I do.
Oh God, yeah. That's the one. It's the one reason I would never. I'll tell you a funny. So my son swam, and he swims for East Gaston, and obviously Coach Rivers is his coach.
Yeah.
And there was like a snowstorm or whatever, and the thing got canceled back in whenever the season was, and they get canceled. He's got to drive the bus home, and my son gets in the car, and I'm like, did Coach Hawkins have to drive that bus? And he goes, yeah, and I'm like, all I can imagine is you sitting on 85, like your fingers,
it's probably my least favorite part of the job when I started coaching and teaching, it was all one time. It was bus license, coaching, teaching for the first time all together. And I remember going to the athletic director, like, I can't do this. And he's like, please don't fail on purpose. And I was like, that thought hadn't come into my mind until just now. But yeah, there's times where I'm driving this bus and I'm like, I can't believe I'm driving this bus. The driving part's not horrible. It's the parking that giant bus every time. And the kids like to mess with me that I'm like, you're a horrible bus driver. And I was like, we got here safely and we hit nothing. You have no say. You just got your license. You think you're invincible. You have no say in this story.
That's funny. So what's your plan now? Like, what's your 10-year plan for where do you see yourself?
10-year plan. Hopefully I'm still teaching at East Gaston. That has been my plan. I'm at the point in my life where, 10 years from now, there's husband, kids in the future. I don't know what that looks like with me still coaching in that sort of area. I don't want to say that I'm not. I don't want to say that I am. I just hope I want to continue doing it as long as I love it. And right now I really, really love it. And I couldn't imagine not going back to it. So I don't like to put too much out into the world of like what that's going to look like. That's for God to figure out and me to follow along the way. But still at East Gaston, still cheering on athletics, whether it's as a coach or it's on the sideline, cheering along, whatever, in the stands, whatever it may be. I still want to be able to support those athletes and those kids as much as I can and in any way possible.